My name is Tom Rourke, and I used to believe in the American dream. 42 years old, senior project manager at Meridian Optics, owner of a 4-bedroom colonial in Naperville with a 2-car garage and a lawn that would make the neighbors weep with envy. I had everything a man could want: a successful wife, 2 college-age kids, and enough savings to retire comfortably at 60. The only problem? It was all built on lies. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through our 18-year marriage. Marta's late nights at the advertising agency, her sudden interest in yoga classes that seemed to run until midnight, the way she'd clutch her phone like a lifeline whenever I walked into the room. "Tom, could you grab some milk on your way home?" she'd text, as if we were roommates splitting grocery duties instead of husband and wife. Meanwhile, I was more likely to win a Nobel Prize than get a hug before 8 in the morning. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the morning that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in October, one of those crisp Chicago mornings where the leaves crunch under your feet and you can smell winter lurking just around the corner. I was sitting at our kitchen island, nursing my second cup of coffee and reviewing project timelines on my laptop, when Marta breezed in wearing a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. "Running late," she announced, grabbing a protein bar from the cabinet. "Client meeting moved up to 8:30. "Which client?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. "Henderson Group, the pharmaceutical campaign." I nodded, filing the information away. Marta worked with dozens of clients, and I'd long ago stopped trying to keep track of them all. But something about the way she said it, and too casual, too rehearsed, made me glance up. She was already halfway to the garage door, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown timer. "See you tonight," I called after her. "Late meeting," she called back. "Don't wait up." The garage door rumbled open, then closed, and I was alone with my coffee and a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. It was the same feeling I got at work when a project timeline didn't add up, when the numbers looked good on paper, but the underlying assumptions were flawed. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Marta's contact. Her location sharing was still on, a leftover from when the kids were younger and we'd wanted to keep track of each other's whereabouts. According to the little dot on my screen, she was heading toward downtown Chicago, just like she'd said. But Henderson Group's offices were in Schaumburg, northwest of the city. I knew because I'd driven her to their Christmas party 2 years ago. I sat there for a long moment, staring at that little dot as it moved steadily away from where it should be going. There could be a dozen explanations. Maybe they'd moved offices. Maybe the meeting was at a restaurant. Maybe I was remembering wrong. Or maybe my wife was lying to me. I closed the phone and went back to my laptop, but the project timelines might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. My mind kept circling back to that dot on the map, to the way Marta had avoided eye contact when she mentioned the client name, to the growing distance between us that I'd been trying to ignore for months. My phone buzzed with a text from my son Ross. "Dad, can you Venmo me $50? Textbooks are expensive." I smiled despite myself. Ross was a senior at Northwestern, majoring in communications with a minor in creative excuses for needing money. But he was a good kid, and unlike his mother, he never lied about where the money was going. "What's it really for?" I texted back. "Pizza and beer. But textbook sounds more responsible." I laughed and sent the money. At least someone in my family was honest with me. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of conference calls and project reviews. I managed to push thoughts of Marta to the back of my mind, focusing instead on a particularly challenging contract with a medical device manufacturer. It was the kind of work I'd always loved, complex optical systems that required precision engineering and creative problem solving. But around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a notification. Marta had tagged me in a photo on social media. I opened it expecting to see some client lunch or office celebration. Instead, I found a picture of Marta and her gay best friend, Jake Turnbull, at what looked like an upscale cafe. They were sitting close together, laughing at something on Jake's phone. The caption read, "Strategy session with my favorite creative director. Hockerstrash. Work husband best team." Jake was Marta's colleague at the agency, a 38-year-old creative director with perfectly styled hair and an expensive wardrobe. He'd been to our house for dinner parties, had joined us for weekend barbecues, and had always struck me as the kind of guy who used summer as a verb and owned more skincare products than my daughter. In the photo, his hand was resting on Marta's shoulder in a way that seemed a little too familiar for a work meeting, but maybe I was reading too much into it. Jake was gay, after all. Marta had made that clear from the beginning, usually followed by some comment about how lucky she was to have a male friend she didn't have to worry about. I stared at the photo for a long moment, then put my phone away. I was being paranoid. Marta and Jake were friends and colleagues. The fact that she'd lied about her meeting location was probably just a mistake on my part, but that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. That evening, I was in my home office working on a proposal when I heard Marta's car in the driveway. It was almost 9 o'clock, late, but not unusually so for her. I listened to her footsteps in the hallway, the sound of her heels being kicked off in the bedroom, the shower running. When she finally appeared in my office doorway, she was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair still damp from the shower. "How was your day?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Good. Busy. How was the Henderson meeting?" "Fine. Long. You know how these pharmaceutical clients are. Everything has to be perfect." I nodded, watching her face. She looked tired, but then again, she always looked tired these days. Jake seemed to enjoy lunch. "Jake?" She looked genuinely confused for a moment, then her expression cleared. "Oh, right. We grabbed a quick bite between meetings. I forgot I posted that." "I thought you said you had back-to-back meetings all day." "We did. It was a working lunch." The explanation was perfectly reasonable, so why did it feel like she was reading from a script? "I'm beat," she said, stifling a yawn. "I think I'll head to bed early." She disappeared down the hallway, leaving me alone with my laptop and my doubts. I tried to focus on the proposal, but my mind kept wandering. After an hour of accomplishing nothing, I gave up and decided to call it a night. As I was closing my laptop, I noticed something on my desk that hadn't been there that morning. A small piece of paper, folded in half. I opened it and found a receipt from Romano's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The date was today's, the timestamp showed 7:30 p.m., and the total was for 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, and dessert. Marta had told me she was working late, but according to this receipt, she'd been having dinner at one of the most romantic restaurants in the city. I sat there staring at the receipt, my mind racing. Maybe it was from a client dinner, maybe she'd forgotten to mention it, maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation, or maybe my wife was having an affair with her gay best friend who wasn't so gay after all. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my wallet. Then I turned off the lights and headed to bed, where Marta was already asleep, or pretending to be. As I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathing, I made a decision. I was going to find out what was really going on. Because if there's one thing 18 years of marriage had taught me, it's that the truth has a way of surfacing eventually. And when it did, I was going to be ready for it. The next few days passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. On the surface, everything was normal. Marta went to work, I went to work, we exchanged pleasantries over coffee in the morning and made small talk about our days in the evening. But underneath, I was conducting my own private investigation. I started small. I paid attention to her phone habits, noting how she'd flip it face down whenever she set it on the counter, how she'd step out of the room to take certain calls. I listened to her explanations for late nights and weekend work sessions, filing away inconsistencies and checking them against her social media posts. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. On Thursday, she claimed to be in a client presentation all afternoon, but her location showed her at Oak Street Beach. When I asked about it over dinner, she said the presentation had been moved to a lakefront restaurant. Plausible, but it was the third time that week her story had needed adjustment. On Friday, I found another receipt in my jacket pocket, this one from a boutique hotel in River North. The date was from the previous week when Marta had supposedly been at a conference in Milwaukee. The charges included not just a room, but room service for 2 and a bottle of champagne. I was building a case, piece by piece, like an engineer reverse engineering a faulty design. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed proof. The opportunity came on Saturday morning. Marta announced she was going shopping with her sister Victoria, then to a yoga class. She'd be gone most of the day. "Take your time," I told her, kissing her cheek. "I'll probably work on the proposal for the Johnson contract." After she left, I waited 20 minutes, then went to our bedroom. Marta's laptop was sitting on her dresser, closed but not locked away. She'd grown careless, confident in her deception. I opened it and navigated to her email. What I found there made my stomach turn. Dozens of messages between Marta and Jake, going back months. They weren't discussing advertising campaigns or client strategies. They were planning rendezvous, sharing intimate photos, and discussing their future together. "Can't wait to tell Tom the truth," one message from Jake read. "This charade is getting exhausting." "Not yet," Marta had replied. "I need to make sure the financial arrangements are in place first. Tom's not going to make this easy." Financial arrangements. I clicked through to her banking app, which was still logged in on her browser. What I found there was even worse than the affair. Over the past 6 months, Marta had been systematically moving money out of our joint accounts and into a new account that only had her name on it. Not huge amounts that would trigger alerts, but steady transfers that added up to nearly $30,000. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the transactions. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was planning to leave me and take half our assets with her. The woman I'd loved and trusted for 18 years was treating our marriage like a business deal to be dissolved. I was about to close the laptop when I noticed something else. A folder on her desktop labeled Legal Documents. Inside, I found draft divorce papers, already filled out and ready to be filed. According to the paperwork, she was planning to claim irreconcilable differences and ask for spousal support, half our assets, and primary custody of any future children. Future children? Our kids were 20 and 22. What was she talking about? Then I saw the medical folder, and everything became clear. Prenatal vitamins, ultrasound appointments. A positive pregnancy test dated 3 weeks ago. Marta was pregnant, and based on the timeline in her messages with Jake, there was no way the baby was mine. I sat there in our bedroom, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated plan to destroy my life and rebuild hers with another man. But Marta had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I spent the next hour carefully photographing every document, every email, every bank statement. Then I created my own encrypted folder on a secure cloud server and uploaded everything. By the time Marta came home with shopping bags and stories about her wonderful day with Victoria, I had enough evidence to bury her in any divorce court in the country. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. I had a better idea. "How was shopping?" I asked, helping her carry bags in from the garage. "Great. Victoria found this adorable dress for the Henderson group party next week. You should come with me. It'll be fun." "The Henderson group party? Remember, I told you about it. Big client celebration. Jake's been planning it for months?" Another lie. I'd already checked the Henderson group's website and social media. No party announcements, no event listings. Whatever Marta and Jake were planning for next week, it wasn't a client celebration. "Sounds like fun," I said. "I'll clear my calendar." That evening, I called my daughter Amelia at the University of Illinois. "Dad, what's up? You sound weird." "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you noticed anything different about your mother lately?" There was a long pause. "Different how?" "I don't know. Distracted, secretive. Like she's got something big going on that she's not telling us about." Another pause, longer this time. "Dad, is everything okay between you and Mom?" "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so. But if it's not, I want you to know that whatever happens, it's not your fault or Ross's fault. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love." "Dad, you're scaring me." "Don't be scared. Just remember that I love you, and nothing will ever change that. Can you do me a favor and not mention this conversation to your mother? At least, not yet." "Okay, but Dad?" "I have to go, honey, but we'll talk soon. I promise." I hung up feeling like the worst father in the world. But Amelia and Ross deserved to know what kind of person their mother really was. And when the time came, I wanted them to hear it from me, not from some lawyer or court document. The next morning, I started phase 2 of my investigation. I hired a private investigator, a former Chicago cop named Pete Morrison, who specialized in matrimonial cases. I gave him copies of everything I'd found and asked him to dig deeper. "How far do you want me to go with this?" Pete asked during our meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Naperville. "All the way," I said. "I want to know everything. Where they go, what they do, who else knows about it. I want documentation of every lie, every secret meeting, every dollar she's stolen from our accounts." "This is going to get expensive." "I don't care. This woman has been planning to destroy my life for months. I want to be ready when she makes her move." Pete nodded. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll have everything you need." As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. For months, I'd been living in a fog of suspicion and doubt, questioning my own instincts and making excuses for Marta's behavior. Now I knew the truth, and I could finally start planning my response. Marta thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to find out how wrong she was. That evening, she came home with news. "I have something to tell you," she said, settling onto the couch beside me with an expression of barely contained excitement. "What's that?" "I'm pregnant." I looked at her, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 18 years, and felt nothing but disgust. But I kept my expression neutral, even managed a smile. "Pregnant? Are you sure?" "I took 3 tests. They were all positive. I have a doctor's appointment next week to confirm, but Tom, we're going to have a baby. She threw her arms around me, and I forced myself to hug her back, to play the role of the surprised but happy husband. This is incredible, I said. I thought we were done having kids. I know, right? It's like a miracle. A second chance for us. A second chance. If only she knew what I was planning, she might not be so eager for new beginnings. Have you told the kids yet? I asked. Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. But Tom, there's something else. The doctor thinks it might be twins, maybe even triplets. Triplets. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. My cheating wife was pregnant with another man's children, possibly 3 of them, and she was sitting here acting like it was the best news of our lives. Triplets, I repeated. Wow, that's going to change everything. I know. We'll need a bigger house, maybe a minivan, and I'll probably have to take extended maternity leave. It's going to be tight financially, but we'll make it work. Financially tight? She was planning to leave me for Jake, take half our assets, and claim support for 3 children that weren't even mine. The audacity was breathtaking. We should celebrate, I said. Why don't we throw a party? Invite everyone. Victoria, your parents, Jake, all our friends. Make it a real announcement. Marta's eyes lit up with genuine excitement. That's a wonderful idea. We could do it next weekend? I'll call Victoria tomorrow and start planning. Actually, I interjected, cutting her off mid-sentence, let me handle the planning. You've got enough to worry about with the pregnancy. I'll take care of everything. She paused, a little surprised, before raising an eyebrow. Are you sure? You hate planning parties? I forced a smile, trying to sound convincing, even though I knew the lies were thick on my tongue. For this? For our miracle babies? I'll make an exception. Her lips curled into a warm smile, and before I could stop her, she kissed me long and soft. I felt the warmth of her affection, but beneath it, I tasted the lies, her lies. She had no idea how much I knew. She had no idea how much I had uncovered, and yet I kissed her back. I kissed her because I needed her to believe that I was still the same trusting fool she'd been manipulating for months. I needed her to believe that I was still the man who would do anything for her, the man who couldn't see what was right in front of him. She needed to think I was still that man, because I had plans, and those plans were going to destroy her. When she went to bed that night, I stayed up late, my mind buzzing with an unsettling mix of dread and anticipation. I couldn't sleep, not when everything was about to change. I grabbed a pen and paper, and with a steady hand I began making lists. Guest lists, supply lists, and most importantly, a very detailed plan for exactly how I was going to destroy her life in front of everyone she cared about. I would expose her for who she truly was, the woman who had played me for a fool, the woman who had betrayed everything we'd built, all in the name of a future with Jake. Marta wanted to make an announcement? Oh, I would give her an announcement she'd never forget. Planning a party with the sole purpose of destroying your wife's life requires a level of focus and precision that few could appreciate. It's not just about the details, it's about orchestrating a spectacle. Over the course of the next week, I threw myself into the preparations with the same obsessive attention to detail that I used in my engineering work. Each step, each moment, had to be flawless. I couldn't afford a single mistake. First, the guest list. I invited everyone, Marta's parents, her sister Victoria, her work friends, including Danny, the office gossip who couldn't keep a secret to save her life, our neighbors, college friends, and even people we hadn't spoken to in years. I wanted a big crowd, lots of witnesses for what was about to unfold. I wanted everyone there, watching, because this wasn't just about Marta. It was about making sure that everyone who mattered to her knew exactly who she was and who I had become. But it was Greg Castellano who I was most focused on, Jake's boyfriend of 3 years. Pete Morrison's investigation had confirmed my suspicions. Greg had no idea about the affair. He thought Jake was working late or attending client events. He had no clue that his partner, his seemingly loyal partner, was planning to leave him for a married woman, a woman who had no qualms about betraying him just as she had betrayed me. I had to invite him. I needed him there to see the truth. Maybe it would be the final straw for him, maybe not, but it didn't matter. I wanted him to feel the shock and humiliation that had been my constant companions for the past few months. Marta, unsuspecting as always, looked over the guest list one evening as I casually handed it to her. "Tom, this is incredible," she said, glancing up at me with a surprised smile. 53 people? Are you sure we can handle that many?" Nothing's too good for our miracle babies," I replied, my voice steady, my heart beating faster with every word. I patted her still flat stomach, pretending to share her excitement. Besides, news this big deserves a big celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was right. It was going to be big news, just not the kind she was expecting. It wasn't going to be a happy announcement. It was going to be a revelation, the kind of revelation that shatters everything, that burns bridges, and destroys the life you thought you knew. Pete's final report had arrived that morning. It was even more damning than I'd hoped. Photos of Marta and Jake, caught entering hotel rooms together, their faces flushed with excitement or whatever else they'd been doing. Audio recordings of phone conversations where they openly discussed their plans to leave their respective partners, to run away together, to start a new life, leaving destruction in their wake. It was all there. Proof. Unquestionable proof of everything I'd feared. And yet somehow I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The evidence was undeniable, and now I had everything I needed to turn this into the show of a lifetime. The party wasn't just a celebration, it was a stage, and Marta was about to take center stage for the performance of her life. Only this time, she wouldn't be the star. I would be. Records showing not just the money she'd stolen from our accounts, but also evidence that Jake had been funneling client funds into a private account to finance their new life together. But the real bombshell was the paternity test results. Marta thought she'd been clever, getting the test done at a clinic across town under an assumed name. What she didn't know was that Pete had a contact at the lab who was willing to share information for the right price. The babies, yes it was twins, not triplets as she'd been claiming, were definitely Jake's. The DNA evidence was conclusive. I spent hours that week setting up cameras around the house, hidden in picture frames and decorative objects. I wanted every moment of what was about to happen recorded from multiple angles. This wasn't just going to be a private humiliation, it was going to be a public spectacle that would follow Marta and Jake for the rest of their lives. The morning of the party, I was in the kitchen arranging catering trays when Marta appeared, glowing in a flowing blue dress that artfully concealed her pregnancy. "You've been amazing about all this," she said, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "I know I've been distant lately, with work stress and now the pregnancy hormones, but I want you to know how much I appreciate you." "Just returning the favor," I said. "You've given me so much over the years." She had no idea how much she was about to give me. Guests started arriving at 2 o'clock. Victoria came early to help with final preparations, bringing her usual drama and unsolicited advice. Marta's parents drove up from Springfield, beaming with excitement about becoming grandparents again. Our neighbors Carol and Jim brought a bottle of champagne and stories about their own surprise pregnancy 20 years ago. Jake arrived fashionably late, wearing a designer suit and carrying an expensive bottle of wine. He hugged Marta a little too long, his hand lingering on her lower back in a way that would have seemed innocent to most people. But I was watching for it, and I saw the flash of intimacy that passed between them. "Tom," he said, turning to me with that practiced smile. "Congratulations, man. This is incredible news." "Isn't it?" I replied, shaking his hand. "Life is full of surprises." Greg arrived shortly after, looking uncomfortable in his pressed khakis and button-down shirt. He wasn't much for social gatherings, preferring quiet nights at home to large parties. But I'd made a point of personally inviting him, telling him how much it would mean to Jake to have him there. "Thanks for including me," he said, accepting a beer from the cooler. "Jake's been so busy with work lately, we barely see each other anymore." "I know exactly how you feel," I said. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to pin down." By 3:30, the house was packed. Conversations flowed, drinks were poured, and everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time. Marta was in her element, graciously accepting congratulations and fielding questions about due dates and baby names. At 4 o'clock, I called for everyone's attention. "If I could have everyone gather in the living room," I announced, "Marta and I have some exciting news to share." The crowd assembled, drinks in hand, faces bright with anticipation. Marta stood beside me, radiant and unsuspecting. Jake positioned himself near the back of the room, Greg at his side. 18 years ago, I began, I married the most amazing woman I'd ever met. Marta has been my partner, my best friend, and the mother of my children. Today, we're here to celebrate the next chapter in our story." Marta squeezed my hand, tears glistening in her eyes. Around the room, people smiled and nodded, caught up in the emotion of the moment. "Marta is pregnant," I continued, and the room erupted in cheers and applause. "But that's not the only surprise we have for you today." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. "You see, we recently got some test results back that revealed something unexpected about these babies." Marta's smile faltered slightly. She was probably wondering why I was dragging out the announcement, why I hadn't stuck to the script we'd discussed. The results show that these babies, twins actually, not triplets as we initially thought, have a very interesting genetic profile. I opened the envelope and pulled out the paternity test results, holding them up for everyone to see. According to the DNA analysis, the father of these babies isn't me. The room went completely silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. The father, I continued, is Jake Turnbull. The silence shattered like glass. Gasps, exclamations, the sound of someone dropping a drink. I saw Victoria's face go white, saw Marta's mother cover her mouth in shock. But I kept my eyes on Jake, watching as the color drained from his face, as the reality of what was happening hit him like a freight train. "Tom, what are you doing?" Marta whispered, but her voice carried in the stunned silence. "I'm telling the truth," I said. "Something you haven't done in months." I pulled out my phone and opened the folder containing screenshots of their email exchanges. For the past 6 months, my wife has been having an affair with Jake Turnbull, her supposedly gay colleague. They've been planning to leave their respective partners, steal money from joint accounts, and start a new life together with these babies. Greg stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. "Jake, is this true?" Jake opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like a man who just watched his entire life collapse in real time. "There's more," I said, pulling out bank statements. "Marta has stolen nearly $30,000 from our joint accounts, moving it to a private account she planned to use to finance her new life. She's also been embezzling client funds from the advertising agency, with Jake's help." "That's enough," Marta finally found her voice. "Tom, stop this right now." "Stop what? Telling the truth? Showing our friends and family who you really are?" She lunged for the papers in my hands, but I stepped back, holding them out of reach. "These are copies," I said. "I have the originals in a safe place, along with photos, audio recordings, and financial records documenting everything you've done." The room erupted in chaos. Victoria was shouting at me, calling me names I can't repeat in polite company. Marta's father was demanding explanations. Greg was confronting Jake, his voice rising with each unanswered question. But through it all, I stood calmly in the center of the storm, watching my carefully orchestrated plan unfold exactly as I'd envisioned it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my voice above the din, "I give you my wife, Marta Rourke, and her lover, Jake Turnbull. Liars, cheaters, and thieves, all 3 of them." Marta was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks, her perfect party dress wrinkled and stained with spilled wine. Jake had backed against the wall, looking like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you. Get out of my house." "Tom, please," Marta begged. "We can work this out. We can talk about this privately." "The time for private conversations is over. You made this public when you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. Now you get to live with the consequences." Greg had heard enough. He grabbed Jake by the arm and started dragging him toward the door. "We're done," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "We are completely done." Jake finally found his voice. "Greg, wait. Let me explain." "Explain what? How you've been screwing a married woman while I've been home planning our future together? How you've been stealing money to finance your affair? There's nothing to explain." They were gone, Jake's protests fading as Greg hauled him out to the street. Marta stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully constructed lies, facing the judgment of everyone she'd ever cared about. "I think you should leave, too," I said gently. "Victoria can drive you. You shouldn't be behind the wheel right now." Marta looked around the room one last time, taking in the shocked faces, the disappointed expressions, the whispered conversations already beginning. Then she turned and walked out, Victoria trailing behind her with murder in her eyes. After they left, I turned to address the remaining guests. "I apologize for putting you all through this," I said, "but I thought you deserved to know the truth about the people you've been calling friends." One by one, they came up to me. Handshakes, hugs, words of support and encouragement. Even Marta's parents, devastated as they were, told me they understood why I'd done what I'd done. "She's our daughter," her father said, "but what she did to you was wrong. We raised her better than this." By 6 o'clock, the house was empty, except for the catering staff cleaning up the mess. I stood in my living room, surrounded by empty glasses and crumpled napkins, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My phone was already buzzing with texts and calls, friends wanting details, reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story, lawyers offering their services. But I ignored them all. I had one more call to make, to my kids, before they heard about this from someone else. But first, I poured myself a drink and stepped out onto my back deck, looking out at the yard where I'd spent 18 years building a life with a woman who never deserved it. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and depositions, custody battles, and financial settlements. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was free, and it felt amazing. The story hit social media before I even finished cleaning up the party debris. Someone, probably Danny, who never could resist a good piece of gossip, had live-streamed parts of my revelation, and by Sunday morning, Iraqinal baby daddy drama was trending locally on Twitter. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters, lawyers, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know more about the suburban scandal that had exploded across the internet. I'd stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize, but the voicemails kept piling up. The most important calls came from my kids. "Dad, what the hell happened?" Ross demanded when I finally reached him Sunday afternoon. "My roommate showed me a video of you destroying Mom at some party. Please tell me this is some kind of elaborate prank." "It's not a prank, son. Your mother has been having an affair. She's pregnant with another man's children, and she's been stealing money from our accounts to finance a new life with him." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Holy crap, Dad. Are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in months, actually. But I need you to know that whatever happens between your mother and me, it has nothing to do with you and Amelia. You're both adults, and you can maintain whatever relationship you want with her." "What about the babies? Are they really not yours?" "DNA doesn't lie. They belong to Jake Turnbull, her colleague at the advertising agency." "The gay guy? But I thought..." "Apparently not as gay as we all believed." Ross was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, I'm sorry. I know you loved her." "I loved who I thought she was. Turns out that person never existed." My conversation with Amelia was harder. She cried, asked a dozen questions I couldn't answer, and begged me to try to work things out with Marta. 18 years, Dad. You can't throw away 18 years over one mistake." "Sweetheart, this wasn't one mistake. This was months of calculated deception. Your mother didn't just cheat on me. She planned to destroy my life and steal half our assets to build a new one with someone else. But the babies aren't mine. The DNA test is conclusive. Maybe you could raise them anyway. Lots of families..." "No." My voice was firmer than I'd intended. "I won't be manipulated into raising another man's children while he and your mother laugh about how they fooled the stupid husband. I have more self-respect than that." It was a harsh conversation, but necessary. My kids needed to understand that their mother's choices had consequences, and that I wasn't going to be the forgiving fool who enabled her behavior. Monday morning brought a new set of challenges. I arrived at work to find Pete Morrison waiting in the parking lot with a thick folder under his arm. "We need to talk," he said. "I've got some information you're going to want to see." We went to a coffee shop down the street from my office, where Pete laid out the latest findings from his investigation. "Jake Turnbull is in deeper trouble than just the affair," he said, opening the folder. "I've been tracking his financial records, and it looks like he's been embezzling client funds for over a year. The affair with your wife was just the latest in a series of schemes to hide his theft." He showed me bank records, forged invoices, and email exchanges between Jake and several shell companies that existed only on paper. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "Conservative estimate, about $200,000. He's been billing clients for services never rendered, inflating expense reports, and skimming money from media budgets. Your wife's agency is going to be in serious legal trouble when this comes out." "And Marta? How involved is she?" "Up to her neck. She's been signing off on fake invoices, helping to create false documentation, and using her position to cover for him when clients started asking questions. She's not just an accomplice, she's a co-conspirator." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Bad enough that Marta had cheated on me and stolen our money. But now it looked like she was also facing potential criminal charges. "What happens next?" I asked. "I'm turning this over to the FBI's white-collar crime unit. They'll want to interview you, since some of the stolen money ended up in accounts with your wife's name on them. But you're clearly a victim here, not a perpetrator." "When?" "Soon, maybe as early as this week. You should get a lawyer, Tom, a good one. This is about to get very complicated." I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to focus on work while my mind raced through the implications of what Pete had told me. Not only was my marriage over, but my wife was likely going to prison. The mother of my children, the woman I'd loved for 18 years, was a criminal. That evening, I was sitting in my home office reviewing legal documents when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Victoria standing on my front porch, her face red with anger. "You bastard," she said, pushing past me into the house. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've told the truth, something your sister seems incapable of doing." "You've destroyed her life. She's been fired from her job, Jake won't return her calls, and she's facing a criminal investigation because of your vindictive little stunt." "My stunt?" "Victoria, your sister has been stealing money and having an affair for months. She's pregnant with another man's children and was planning to divorce me and take half our assets. What exactly did you expect me to do? Handle it privately, like a mature adult. Not humiliate her in front of 50 people and post it on social media for the world to see. I stared at this woman, Marta's older sister, who had always treated me like an inconvenient addition to their family. She was just as manipulative as Marta, just as willing to twist the truth to fit her narrative. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me? Get out of my house, right now, and don't come back. You can't. This is my house, Victoria. My name is on the deed, not yours and not Marta's. You have no right to be here, and I want you gone. She opened her mouth to argue, but something in my expression must have convinced her I was serious. She turned and stalked out, slamming the door behind her. I poured myself a drink and called my lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Tom, I've been expecting your call, she said. I saw the video online. Quite a performance. It wasn't a performance. It was the truth. I believe you. And based on what I've seen, you're in a very strong position. Your wife's infidelity, the financial theft, the pregnancy with another man's children, any judge is going to side with you on this. What about the criminal charges Pete Morrison mentioned? That's a separate matter, but it will definitely work in your favor in the divorce proceedings. A woman facing embezzlement charges isn't likely to get much sympathy from a family court judge. I want everything, Patricia. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. She stole from me, lied to me, and humiliated me. I want her to pay for it. I understand your anger, Tom, but let's be strategic about this. We want a settlement that's fair and sustainable, not one that's going to drag on for years in appeals court. Fair? She tried to steal half my life's work to finance a new life with her lover. What's fair about that? Nothing. But revenge isn't the same thing as justice. Let me handle the legal strategy, and you focus on rebuilding your life. After I hung up, I sat in my office thinking about Patricia's words. Was this about justice, or was it about revenge? And did it matter? Marta had made calculated decisions to betray me, steal from me, and destroy our family. She'd shown no remorse, no consideration for the pain she was causing. She'd treated our marriage like a business transaction to be dissolved for her benefit. If that wasn't grounds for revenge, I didn't know what was. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Starbucks on Ogden Avenue tomorrow at 7 p.m. Come alone. G. Greg. Jake's now ex-boyfriend wanted to meet. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I'll be there. Whatever Greg wanted to discuss, I had a feeling it was going to make the situation even more interesting. The Starbucks on Ogden Avenue was nearly empty when I arrived at 7 o'clock Tuesday evening. Greg Castellano was sitting in a corner booth, nursing a large coffee and staring out the window at the evening traffic. He looked like he hadn't slept since the party. His usually neat hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Thanks for coming, he said as I approached the table. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me again after what happened. What happened needed to happen. I just wish it had happened sooner. I ordered a coffee and sat down across from him. Up close, Greg looked even worse than I'd initially thought. This was a man whose world had been completely shattered. How long did you know? He asked without preamble. About the affair? I started suspecting a few weeks ago, but I didn't have proof until recently. What about you? I didn't know anything until you dropped that bomb at your party. But looking back, there were signs. Jake working late all the time, mysterious phone calls, unexplained expenses on our credit cards. Greg pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages. These are from the past 6 months, he said. Jake telling me he'd be home late because of client meetings, weekend work sessions, business trips. I believed every lie because I trusted him. I scrolled through the messages, recognizing the same pattern of deception I'd been experiencing with Marta. The late nights, the vague explanations, the gradual erosion of intimacy and honesty. I'm sorry, I said. I know what it feels like to discover that the person you love has been lying to you. The thing is, I might have been able to forgive the affair. People make mistakes, relationships get complicated, but what I can't forgive is how calculated it all was. They weren't just sleeping together, they were planning a whole new life while actively deceiving us. Greg was right. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a brief lapse in judgment. This was a sustained campaign of deception designed to maximize their gain while minimizing their losses. There's something else, Greg said, lowering his voice. Something you need to know about Jake's business dealings. I'm listening. He's been stealing from clients for over a year. I work in accounting, so I know what financial irregularities look like. When I started paying attention to our personal finances, I noticed deposits that didn't match his salary, expenses that didn't make sense. How much are we talking about? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. He's been running fake billing schemes, inflating media buys, and skimming money from client accounts. Your wife has been helping him cover it up. This confirmed what Pete Morrison had discovered, but hearing it from someone with inside knowledge made it feel more real. Why are you telling me this? I asked, because I want them both to pay for what they've done. Not just to us, but to all the people they've stolen from, lied to, and manipulated. Greg leaned forward, his eyes intense. I've been thinking about this for the past 2 days, and I've realized something. We're stronger together than we are apart. They used our trust against us, played us for fools, while they plotted behind our backs. But now we know the truth, and we have evidence. What kind of evidence? Financial records, email exchanges, documents that Jake thought he'd hidden from me. I've been copying everything I can find before he realizes what I'm doing. I studied Greg's face, trying to gauge his intentions. He was clearly angry and hurt, but there was something else there, a cold determination that reminded me of how I'd felt when I first discovered Marta's betrayal. What are you proposing? I asked. A partnership. We pool our resources, share our evidence, and make sure they face consequences for everything they've done. Not just the affairs, but the theft, the fraud, the lies they've told to cover their tracks. And then what? Then we watch their carefully constructed world collapse around them, just like ours did. I sipped my coffee, considering Greg's proposal. There was a certain poetic justice to the idea, the two people they'd betrayed working together to expose their crimes. But it was also risky. If we do this, I said, we have to be smart about it. No emotional decisions, no actions that could backfire on us legally. Agreed. I've already contacted the FBI about the financial crimes. They're going to want to interview both of us. When? This week? Maybe tomorrow. The agent I spoke with said they've been investigating irregularities at several advertising agencies, and our information could be the key to a much larger case. The scope of what we were discussing was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about exposing an affair. We were potentially bringing down a criminal enterprise. There's one more thing, Greg said, pulling out a manila envelope. I found these in Jake's home office. He handed me a stack of photographs, images of Marta and Jake at various hotels and restaurants over the past several months. But these weren't the candid surveillance photos Pete had taken. These were posed shots, selfies, romantic pictures that they'd taken themselves. They were planning to use these in their announcement, Greg explained, when they finally decided to leave us and go public with their relationship. I stared at the photos, feeling a fresh wave of anger, not just because of the betrayal they represented, but because of the sheer arrogance. They'd been so confident in their deception that they documented it, created a scrapbook of their lies. Keep them, Greg said. Your lawyer will want to see them. We spent the next hour planning our strategy. Greg would continue gathering evidence from Jake's files while being careful not to tip him off. I would coordinate with Pete Morrison and my attorney to make sure everything we collected would be admissible in court. Most importantly, we would present a united front. When the FBI interviews began, when the media attention intensified, when Jake and Marta tried to spin their own version of events, we would stick to the facts and support each other's testimony. One last question, I said as we prepared to leave. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. Jake is going to prison, and your relationship is going to be dissected in court and in the media. Greg was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the parking lot where Jake's expensive car had once been parked during their happier times. 3 years, he said finally. I spent 3 years of my life with someone who was lying to me every single day. He stole my money, betrayed my trust, and made me an unwitting accomplice to his crimes. So yes, I'm sure. We shook hands in the parking lot, two men who'd been played for fools by people we'd loved and trusted, but we weren't fools anymore. As I drove home, I thought about the strange turn my life had taken. A week ago, I'd been a suburban husband with suspicions about his wife's fidelity. Now I was part of a federal investigation into white-collar crime, allied with my wife's lover's ex-boyfriend in a quest for justice. But it felt right. For the first time since discovering Marta's betrayal, I felt like I was taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. The caller ID showed Patricia Chen's number. "Tom, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "The FBI wants to interview you tomorrow morning, and there's something else. Marta's attorney called. She wants to negotiate a settlement." "What kind of settlement?" "The kind where she admits no wrongdoing but agrees to a quick divorce in exchange for a modest financial settlement. She's scared, Tom. The criminal investigation has her running scared." I smiled as I walked into my empty house, thinking about Greg's determination and the evidence we were assembling. "Tell her attorney we're not interested in settlements," I said. "We're going to trial, and we're going to let a judge decide what she deserves." "Tom, are you sure about this? Trials are expensive, time-consuming, and unpredictable." "I'm sure. Marta made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences." After I hung up, I poured myself a drink and stood in my living room, looking at the space where just a few days ago I'd exposed my wife's lies in front of 50 people. The house felt different now, not empty, but clean, like I'd finally gotten rid of something toxic that had been poisoning my life for months. Tomorrow would bring FBI agents, lawyers, and more complications than I could probably imagine. But tonight, I was ready for whatever came next, because I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. The FBI field office in Chicago was nothing like what I'd expected from watching crime shows on television. Instead of dramatic interrogation rooms and one-way mirrors, I found myself sitting in a bland conference room with fluorescent lighting and generic office furniture, facing two agents who looked more like accountants than federal law enforcement officers. Agent Sarah Martinez was a compact woman in her 40s with graying hair and intelligent eyes. Her partner, Agent David Kim, was younger, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of precise manner that suggested a background in financial crimes. "Mr. Rourke," Agent Martinez began, "thank you for coming in voluntarily. We understand this is a difficult situation for you personally." "I want to help however I can," I said. "My wife and her partner have been stealing money and lying to everyone around them. People deserve to know the truth." Agent Kim opened a thick folder and spread documents across the table: bank records, email printouts, photographs. "We've been investigating irregularities at several Chicago advertising agencies for the past 8 months," he said. "Your situation has provided us with some crucial missing pieces." They walked me through Jake's schemes in detail. It was even more extensive than Pete Morrison had discovered. Jake had been creating fake vendor companies, billing clients for services that were never provided, and inflating media purchases to skim money off the top. The total theft was approaching $500,000. "Where does my wife fit into this?" I asked. "Mrs. Rourke was the account supervisor on several of the affected campaigns," Agent Martinez explained. "She signed off on invoices, approved payments, and helped create documentation to cover up the theft when clients started asking questions." "So she's facing criminal charges?" "That's likely, yes. We're still building the case, but based on the evidence we've gathered, both she and Mr. Turnbull will probably be indicted on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering." The room was quiet for a moment as the implications sank in. My wife, the mother of my children, was going to prison. "How long are we talking about?" I asked. Federal sentencing guidelines for this type of crime typically range from 2 to 5 years, depending on the amount stolen and the defendant's cooperation with the investigation. Agent Kim leaned forward. "Mr. Rourke, we need to ask you some difficult questions about your personal finances. Some of the stolen money ended up in accounts with your wife's name on them, and we need to establish that you had no knowledge of the source of those funds." For the next 2 hours, they grilled me about every aspect of my financial life: bank statements, investment accounts, credit card records, tax returns. They wanted to know about every deposit, every withdrawal, every unusual transaction over the past 18 months. I answered every question honestly, providing documentation for everything they requested. By the time we were finished, I felt like they knew more about my finances than I did. "One last thing," Agent Martinez said as we wrapped up. "We understand that you've been working with Gregory Castellano to gather additional evidence. Greg has been very helpful. He's provided information that I wouldn't have been able to access on my own. We appreciate his cooperation, but we want to make sure you understand that this is now an active federal investigation. Any evidence gathering needs to be coordinated through our office to ensure it's admissible in court. Of course, we just want to see justice done. We understand. And Mr. Rourke, we're sorry for what you've been through. Being betrayed by someone you trust is never easy, but being made an unwitting participant in their crimes adds another layer of violation." I left the FBI office feeling drained, but oddly relieved. For months, I'd been living with suspicions and half-truths. Now everything was out in the open, being handled by professionals who had the authority to ensure that Marta and Jake faced real consequences for their actions. My phone was buzzing with missed calls and text messages. Patricia Chen wanted to discuss strategy for the divorce proceedings. Pete Morrison had new information about Marta's financial activities. Ross and Amelia were checking in to make sure I was okay. But the message that caught my attention was from Greg. "Jake was arrested this morning. Thought you should know." I called him back immediately. "It happened about an hour ago," Greg said. 2 agents showed up at his apartment with a warrant. They seized his computers, his files, even his phone. He's being held pending arraignment. What about Marta? I don't know, but if they arrested Jake, she's probably next. I was right. Marta was arrested that afternoon at her sister Victoria's house, where she'd been staying since our confrontation at the party. The local news picked up the story, running footage of her being led away in handcuffs while Victoria screamed at the cameras about harassment and persecution. That evening, I sat in my living room watching the news coverage with a strange sense of detachment. The woman on the screen being described as an alleged embezzler and fraud was someone I'd shared a bed with for 18 years, someone I'd trusted with my deepest secrets and greatest fears. But she also wasn't the person I'd thought I'd married. That person had been a fiction, a carefully constructed facade designed to hide the calculating criminal underneath. My phone rang, breaking the stillness of the night. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Patricia Chen. Tom, Marta's attorney, called again. With the criminal charges now filed, she's desperate to settle the divorce quickly and quietly. Patricia's voice crackled through the line. I felt a wave of cold amusement wash over me. What's she offering? She'll give up any claim to the house, the retirement accounts, and most of the joint assets. She wants to keep her car and her personal belongings, and she's asking for a small monthly support payment to help with legal fees. And in exchange? I asked, already dreading what was coming next. You agree not to pursue civil remedies for the money she stole, and you don't provide any additional cooperation to the federal investigators beyond what you've already done. I couldn't help it. I laughed, loudly in fact. She's facing federal prison time, she's pregnant with another man's children, and she's been exposed as a liar and a thief in front of everyone we know, I said, almost incredulously. And she thinks she's in a position to negotiate? Desperate people make desperate offers, Tom, but I have to advise you that this is actually a pretty good deal. You get almost everything you want, and you avoid a lengthy, expensive trial. No deal, I said firmly, the words like steel in my chest. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with all the consequences. I want this to go to trial. I want every detail of her betrayal on the public record. Tom, Patricia, I appreciate your advice, but my mind is made up. Marta spent months planning to destroy my life and steal my assets. She showed me no mercy, and I'm not going to show her any. If she wants to play dirty, I'll let her taste the dirt she's buried herself in. The line went silent for a moment, then Patricia let out a long breath. Okay, Tom. If you're sure, I'll proceed as you've asked. After hanging up, I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked out onto the back deck. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, crisp, invigorating. I looked up at the sky. The stars were brilliant, each one a tiny beacon of light, casting an ethereal glow over the quiet world below. The vastness of the universe stretched above me, an infinite canvas that made everything else feel small and insignificant. But I didn't feel small. For the first time in months, I felt powerful, like I was standing at the helm of my life once again. I was no longer the man controlled by Marta's lies, the man blinded by love and deceit. Now I was the one in control. I was the one making the decisions, taking charge of my own fate. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my reverie. A text from Greg. Saw the news? How are you holding up? Better than I expected, I typed back. How about you? Same. It's weird, but I feel relieved, like a weight has been lifted. Want to grab dinner tomorrow? Compare notes on how it feels to be free? I'd like that, Greg replied almost immediately. I smiled to myself. Free. It was a word I'd never thought I'd associate with myself again. But here it was, hanging in the air, like a promise. A promise that tomorrow, the day after, the weeks ahead, those would be the days when I could start to rebuild, when I could start living again, without the shadow of Marta's manipulation looming over me. I tucked my phone back into my pocket and turned back inside. The house was still and silent, eerily so, but I welcomed it. There was no clattering of her heels in the hallway, no sound of her fake laughter echoing through the rooms, no more pretending, no more games. Tomorrow would bring complications, more media attention, more legal proceedings, more family drama. But tonight, I would savor the stillness of the house, the satisfaction of knowing that justice, at long last, was on its way. Some people say that revenge is a dish best served cold. I say serve it with handcuffs, federal charges, and a side of public humiliation, and it tastes absolutely perfect.